Hello. Are you ready for senior Fullstack developer interview today?
Yes, sir, I am.
Then explain to me what is CORS. What exactly is a cross-origin request and various parameters to configure CORS correctly?
I know a bit about CORS, but rest of the questions are a bit tricky. Let me try to remember the YouTube video I had seen last week.
Hello everyone, so welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to cover a senior full stack level interview question which is based on CORS. So CORS basically stands for cross origin resource sharing. So let's try to understand what is CORS first. So CORS is basically a security mechanism which is implemented by web browsers, and more specifically than web browsers, it are set up by the server itself to control how a resource on a web page or a server can be requested from another domain or origin. So core settings are generally set up on a target server, and that target servers make sure that only the authorized requests are allowed from its own request session or request that come to that server. So let's try to understand why CORS is essential. So CORS restrictions basically protect the users from malicious websites from attempting to steal their data. Now before I get into this, let's try to understand the CORS error which we come across first when we try to develop a full stack app. So basically when I was personally developing a full stack application for the first time, I had spin up a React.js based app which was running on port 3000. Then I had set up an Express.js app which was running on port 5000, and on Postman the API response was fine. But when I called the API on my Express.js server, which was running on port 5000 from my front-end app which was running on port 3000, the browser got blank and the console was red with an CORS error. That was the first time when I came across this issue, and I tried to gauge why this error happened in the first place. And then I came to realize that this is a security mechanism basically, which makes sure that the servers are protected from unauthorized requests. The reason for this being, let's just say instead of my Express.js server, there was a financial website, and instead of my React app, let's just say there is some malicious user who is trying to access that financial website. Now, if the core settings are not configured properly, and if the malicious user has my credentials, or let's just say has my session information, and the malicious user is trying to access the server API from some domain, let's just say, which is different from the financial data domain, using his own website, or let's just say some website which is unsecure, unauthorized, or a improper website. So in that case, if CORS is not enabled, then that financial server would allow the access, and that could lead to a data breach or financial loss as well. So basically, to prevent this kind of unauthorized accesses, CORS was initially implemented in the browser level. The reason for this being so that malicious websites are not created, and those malicious websites are not able to access the authorized or secured servers. So that was the reason why CORS is enforced, and it's basically a security mechanism. And the error that we get is because the security restrictions are trying to protect my Express.js server or that financial server on the larger level from any unauthorized access. Now let's just try to understand what is a cross-origin request in the first place. We tell about CORS, we tell about this is an issue, but interviewers sometimes ask what constitutes a cross-origin request in the first place, and most of us are not basically clear of why or what it is. Even I was not clear at some point of time. So let's try to understand that. Now the first type of cross-origin request that happens is the cross-origin request which happens from a different domain. Let's just say you have an app which is on, let's just say, frontend.sampleapp.com, where the domain is sampleapp, and you have a server which is api.exampleapp.com, where the domain is exampleapp. Now sampleapp and exampleapp are two different domains, so whenever you are making a request from one domain to another domain, that constitutes a cross origin request, and in that case a cross origin request is executed, and it is on the target server to allow or deny that request based on how the core settings are configured on that server. The second type of cross origin request, which is not widely known or most of the people don't know about, is different protocol. Now let's just say that Express.js server is deployed on some online hosting service, and it has an HTTP connection enabled, that is, it is hosted using a secure connection. And let's just say now you try to access that Express.js server which is on HTTPS connections from your localhost which is on HTTP connection. In that case, the protocol of the Express.js server is HTTPS and the protocol that you have is HTTP. So there is a difference of protocol and even that is not allowed. The reason being, let's just say a financial institution has some server on HTTPS connection and someone tries to access it from localhost to break the system using an HTTP connection. That constitutes a cross-origin request and is directly blocked. So that is one of the reason why different protocol requests are also classified as a cross-origin request. The third type of cross-origin request which we just covered some time back is of different port. Let's just say your React app is running on port 3000 and your Express.js server is running on port 5000. So these two are classified as a different domain request and they are not allowed, which is why you got that CORS error in the first place. Now what do you do to mitigate this problem on localhost? Let's try to understand that in the next slide. So let me just jump into how to set up CORS in an Express.js server. So let's just say you are creating a Munstack app and you have an Express.js server setup on localhost. The first thing that you will do is you will install the CORS module using npm install CORS. Let's save if you want to save it in package.json. The next thing that you do is you set up the code to allow the cross-origin request using CORS module. So just below the Express definition, you define the CORS using const CORS, which is set up here on the second line. And on the fourth line, once you have the app set up, you use the middleware of CORS by setting an app.use CORS, and this allows the CORS setting or the cross-origin request from all domains. So this is the first thing that we generally do when we are building a full stack app locally, and this allows the every domain to access that Express.js API. Since it is running on localhost, only the localhost will be able to access it. So the CORS cross-origin request from your React app running on port 3000 can now that cross-origin request is now able to access the Express.js server on port 5000 and your browser actually shows the response data. So this is the first thing that we do to enable the CORS settings. Now let's just say you are done with your local development and you want to deploy the app. So in that case you have to restrict the domains from which the Express.js server API request is allowed. So for that we have some parameters within the CORS module, and these are the parameters which are responsible for allowing the apps or the front-end apps to access the Express.js server. Now one interview question that comes from this is, what is same origin policy and how is it different from a cross origin policy? So same origin policy is the policy where both the origins are same. For example, let's just say if you have something called frontend.sampleapp.com which is trying to access api.sampleapp.com. In that case, that constitutes a same origin request, and browsers enforce the same origin policy so that the authorized websites are at least able to access the resources on an authorized server. Now if you take the example below, you have something called as origin param defined on line number 4 within the CORS module. So this origin stands for access control allow origin. So basically the domains that are allowed using your Express.js are allowed in your cross-origin request in your Express.js server app can be defined here. Just as we took in this example, let's just say if you allow the domain sampleapp.com to access your Express.js server, then only the request made from this sample domain sampleapp.com will be accessible from your Express.js server app, and only those cross-origin requests will be allowed. So when you make your front-end request from your browser from sampleapp.com to the backend server, then in that case this cross-origin request will be allowed. The second parameter that you can use is access control allow methods. So below the origin you can allow or set the methods which are accessible from a cross-origin request. Let's just say if you only allow a get request, let's just say if you just want to allow the cross-origin browser request to be allowed on only this method. So the cross-origin browser or the domain which is making a cross-origin request, you don't want it to post, put, patch or delete the data, then you can only set the get request method to be allowed. If you want that cross-origin request to be allowed to be making a post request, then you can set the post method as well. So all the methods which are set in this methods array, only those type of cross-origin requests are allowed in your server side. The next kind of setting that you can set in your app is access control allow headers. So let's just say if you have a authentication service which you want some third party users to or third party company to be able to access, in that case you can allow headers like authorization into your CORS module, and in that case the session token or session cookies or some other authorization based tokens can be allowed in the cross origin request. So in the allowed header sections you can set the authorization or content type, or let's just say any headers that you want to be allowed from the cross origin request to be made. So in that case those kind of headers are allowed. The last thing that we can allow is credentials. So let's just say if you want the third party websites or the request made from the third party websites to be allowed to be set to cookies and authentication headers into your server, that you want to allow a third party website to set cookies and authentication headers into your server, in that case you can set the credentials to true. So in that case those can be allowed as well. So this is a sample app in which all the settings which we just covered are defined. So you can set the origin which only allows myapp.com. You can allow the HTTP methods like get and post. You can allow the headers like authorization and content type, and you are setting the credentials to true so that cookies and authorization headers are allowed. So this is how you set up a sample Express.js app, and then you can deploy it to some remote hosting service and then access it from the front-end app, also making sure that it is not accessible to some unauthorized or malicious users as well. So this is a statement which I came across on social media some time back, which aptly briefly explains the CORS mechanism in short. So it tells that CORS is a front-end problem which requires a back-end solution. So CORS is a error which typically comes in the browser, but the solution cannot be set into the browser. You have to set it in on the server level. There are ways to override it into the server which are not recommended, but it is a front-end problem, and the right way to mitigate the CORS issue is to set the CORS setting into the server side. So that is why we say that CORS is a front-end problem which requires a back-end solution. So yeah, that's it from my end for today. Thank you for viewing the video and supporting the channel. Subscribe to the channel to watch more such content in the future, and have a nice day ahead. Goodbye.
Phew, that went well. I should definitely prepare for more such tricky questions in future interviews. Join us for solving more such questions.